schedule it right now. Yeah. There's a little thing called scheduling system. You can look to see who's available. Right. And I'm not.
Call the meeting to orders. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't believe we had any persons wishing to address the school board tonight. Moving on to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval of minutes of September 4th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second of approval of agenda. All those in favor of approval of agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We had no new conflicts of interest to report. Now to the approval of consent agenda items A, B, and C. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda items A, B, and C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to reports of the president. First up is fall 2019 enrollment report. Megan.
I brought friends today. President Mickelson and members of the board, it's a pleasure for us to be here today and present to you our report on our fall semester 2019 enrollment. With me today is Mandy Fryer, our Director of Admissions, and Micah Hansen, our Director of Financial Aid. So our enrollment management leadership team consists of the three of us, as well as our Director of Student Success, Christy Vorthams, who's typically with us. She's gone today, as well as our marketing coordinator. And she had a busy day on campus with some media today, so that's a good thing. But as you know, on Monday, maybe you don't know, but the Board of Technical Education released the systems enrollment report. And it was nice to see overall that we were up 4.3% in head count. And Southeast Tech came in strong with our head count as well. So you can see we were up 188 students, or 8.3% overall in head count compared to last fall. And then we break that down by the percentage of fall semester enrollments by student type. One thing I wanted to mention too is that in rank of our highest enrollment for fall semesters, fall 19 is our 5th highest enrollment at Southeast Tech for head count. And then when we're looking at the breakdown by student type, you'll see that our degree seeking and degree prep students, and then you see our dual credit. So we had significant higher percentage of student population now taking dual credits. So 5.6 last fall, 5.6% last fall in dual credit, and this year we're up to 11%. And our degree seeking students, what's nice to see as well that not all of our growth was in dual credit. We were up about 2.5% over last fall in degree seeking students as well. And so looking at that dual credit, if you recall, for those of you who were here last year, but we talked a lot about losing the Smithfield funded Learners to Leaders initiative. That was so important with our partnership with the Sioux Falls School District. So this year we have 2 new initiatives that I wanted to highlight, which you've been updated on those throughout the year, but the Avera Academy and then the Classroom to Careers effort. So you can see the number of students in that. With the Avera Academy, we actually have a student success advisor who works with those students in connection with the Avera liaison, and they come to Southeast Tech's campus. And then our Classroom to Careers, we have a student success advisor who goes out to Washington High School and works with those students. And then the concurrent number, that is a class that is taught down at CTE. And then the rest of the dual credit students come from a variety of schools, from Sioux Falls School District as well as from area towns around us. And I should say, you know, we have students from West River too. You know, they take an online class, so they're from across the state. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mandy. She's going to give you a breakdown of what a year looks like in the admissions office.
Thanks, Megan. Before I start diving into the slide and visiting about the numbers, I want to start by talking about the admissions funnel, typical admissions recruitment processes for college campuses. And so when we talk about the admissions funnel, you're talking about the top of the funnel, those prospect names, those names of students within the state, areas of interest. We want to convert those to raise their hand and say they're interested in Southeast Tech. We want to then take those interested students and say, yep, I want to apply for admission. We want those students then to be qualified and get accepted. Then we want to move forward and have them pay a registration fee, then have them come to a registration day, get registered, and hopefully resulting in them showing up to class the first day. Now, what does that all look like? Here's where we're going to get into some of the numbers. So the first thing we're going to look at is this number that you see here, that's 99,000. One of the things that I want to stress here is this 99,000 touch points, contacts that we had with students is a newer initiative. So these are additional touch points that we focused on this year alone. These contacts came in the form of postcards, letters, emails, and what the new initiative is we developed a cultivation communication plan where we took names of those students at all different stages of that funnel and communicated to them at the points that they were at. Part of that, we also implemented a communication plan for the summer students, which generated another 10,000 contacts. That 10,000 specifically was focusing on those students that may have been accepted, have paid a registration fee, and or already are registered. Again, we cannot stop the recruitment funnel. We need to keep visiting with those students to make sure they show up on the first day of class. So that's the big number and the new initiative. The 70,000 number is personal contacts that our admissions staff specifically had with students throughout the year. Another number you'll see is 1,000. 1,000 visits we conducted that were personal visits of students and their families coming to meet with us on campus. 500, we had over 500 students attend our visit days. Our first visit day is actually next Friday. We're looking to have a very strong group there as well. In our different events last year, we had over 500, and we're looking to increase that this year. What's also unique that we did this year is really tried to focus on that group of students to see after their experience, how successful was that? And this is one of our most successful events that we have on campus and one of our all-together recruitment activities. We watched them 1 week specifically after they came to the visit day, and 55% of those students made some sort of action with us after they left that visit day. So that was really exciting to see. 400, we had an additional 400 students on camps in our different exploration camps that we hosted on campus. So a little different than the visit day, where it's still on our campus. We're still highlighting our programs, but we're also kind of more focusing on the industry itself. One of the things that I can compare it to is what we had today on campus, highlighting the construction industry. 150 is the next number that you're going to see there. Our admissions staff went out specifically to 150 different high schools in the area. 34 is another number. We went to 34 college fairs in the area, 23 career fairs, and we hit 12 different days of Build Dakota road shows. You can kind of compare that to our high school visit number, because we would actually hit multiple high schools on each one of those days, anywhere from 3 to 6 high schools in one day, and sharing about technical education and the Build Dakota Scholarship Program. And then the final number here is 10. We had 10 plus group tours on our campus. Those consisted of Sioux Falls School District, CTE groups, Women in Science, which was focused on 8th graders, and our annual Sioux Falls School District Sophomore Career Days. So a lot of activity happening on campus and specifically within our admissions office. As we move on, admissions has to coordinate their efforts with the rest of campus. One of the more specific areas that we work with is our Student Success Office. On behalf of them, I'm going to present some of the work that they worked on over the year. One of the first things that we'll talk about is when we converted them to accepted students, they had to come to a registration event to get registered in courses. The Student Success team hosted 7 of those large AAR sessions, which ultimately resulted in 874 students attending. That basically ended about early August. We still have lots of students that are coming in at that point, wanting to still get registered, and we'll take them. And so what our student success team is then hosted some mini sessions to allow more of a collaborative effort to get them registered. And so they hosted another 13 of those, and over 100 students attended those. We also worked on walk-in registrations. Over 200 students were registered one-on-one with student success advisors. And then our online student population, we obviously invite them to campus if they're able and willing. We would be happy to have them on campus, but some are not. And so we accommodate those with our student success advisors to get registered. So, you know, on behalf of our enrollment management team, the leadership of our registrar and director of student success, they really pulled it off by registering a number of students. So. All right, I'm going to pass it on to the director of financial aid, Micah.
Thank you, Mandy. Thank you for your time. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar. I'm rounding up my first year at Southeast Tech as director, so it's been an exciting year. Walked into a team that was a very good, solid team. They definitely know what they're doing, well organized. What we really tasked ourselves with this year was finding efficiencies within the financial aid office so that we can focus on customer service as well as the work that we do. So we've really been looking at the communications that we send out to students and the processes that we have, trying to make sure we keep those efficient. The biggest thing that we changed this year was automated packaging. So previously when we were awarding students, we're pulling them one by one, looking up multiple pieces of information on different screens, and then manually packaging those students. It was very time consuming. So we found a way to automate our process, and through some trial and error, we're able now to take groups of students in large batches where we would package 30 or 40 students at a time through an automated process that pulled all the information onto a report that's easy for us to see, so that we can go through, review those, and more quickly get those students awarded. What that meant was this year at the start of the school year, we didn't have lines of students who were late getting financial aid in that weren't packaged yet because the process was a lengthy process. The number of students that we're able to process through that way has made it much more efficient in our office, and allows us more time to spend with those students who walk in individually to meet with us. In the first 4 weeks, first 2 weeks before classes and the first 2 weeks of classes, we had 1,050 of those students that came into our offices for individual visits. So that automated packaging definitely gave us time to work more with those students. The other update that we want to look at is just our Build Dakota applications and awards. We had an awesome group with Cohort 5, 386 applications for those Build Dakota scholarships. Ended up awarding 138 of those in Cohort 5. 115 of those were in-state awards and 23 of them out of state. We have 91 industry sponsors. It's the most in Cohort 5 for any of the schools. Represent a large number of sponsors. You can see we have folks from Canton, Yankton, Mitchell, Gettysburg, Winter, for example. So multiple sponsors from around the state. And just this graph to show our sponsorship growth. It's obvious in that first cohort with 0, it's pretty easy to improve on that. But coming up, cohort 2 and 3, 20 and 23, and then 62 in cohort 4 and jumping all the way to 91 is an obviously significant increase. We have our foundation and our career services departments to thank for that. This year, 19 new sponsors. Avera grew their sponsorship from 9 to 21 sponsorships. Good Samaritan from 4 to 10. Sanford grew from 16 to 30 sponsorships this year. So we're excited to see those continue, hopefully with the goal of getting almost 100% of our students on sponsorships with the program. Thanks.
So that gives you, you know, Mandy and admissions, Mike on financial aid, their teams are already working on next fall, spring and fall. So it's just an ongoing cycle, but I wanted to give you a snapshot of all the work that goes into bringing in a new class every year. So we have an excellent team. And then finally, just want to let you know, if you haven't checked out the new Southeast Tech app, check it out. Any questions?
I was lucky enough to hear the report at Tech Council as well, so I tried not to reveal too much when we had our work session update and so forth, but I just want to commend Megan, Mandy, Christy, who's not here, and Micah for all your hard work. You guys have just, I mean, if anybody read the Argus last week, the Board of Regents, or this weekend, Board of Regents schools are down by 2% on average, and for us to increase our enrollment is, in this climate, is obviously amazing. So it's due to all your hard work, keeping, you know, getting them signed up and then keeping them to make sure they show up the first day and make sure they have their financial aid. I mean, it just, all of that is such a puzzle that if one piece is off, it can ruin that student's ability to go to school. So I commend you, and looking forward to the future with the add of the vet tech and a very more at Vera Academy and maybe more classroom careers and
Expanding those.
yeah, and hero nursing that we're going to hopefully even see more numbers.
Yeah, I think there's a change in the air for technical education, for sure.
From a personal level, I want to congratulate you all. Earlier today, I had the privilege of interviewing an individual who said right away she was a Bill Dakota Scholarship recipient, and her story conveyed such fulfillment and gratitude and confidence in getting that award and what that means for her trajectory. It was just exciting to see that sparkle in her eye. So thank you for that, and to Vera and Sanford and Good Sam as underwriters of that scholarship program. It's working.
Yep.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, you talked a lot about how you reach out to people, and I think what's different for a Southeast Tech is that your target isn't always the 18 to 22-year-old, fresh out of high school person. And so when I'm listening to, postcards and good old-fashioned phone calls and emails and online, I just think it's so important, and you guys are doing such a great job of reaching out to people.
A lot
and
of
such
texting
different,
these days, too.
yeah, such different methods, but knowing that there's not one way that's going to work for everybody. And so the more diverse we can have, the more diversity we'll have in the student population as well. So I know that takes a lot of coordinating and a lot of effort and trying to find that one right way for that one right student, but it really does make a difference. And so I think that's showing in your numbers. And as you mentioned with some of the retention things, you find that connection with that student, whatever age or whatever program that they're in, and that really means something to them. And so clearly you're doing something right. So thank you for your team for doing that.
And kudos would go to our marketing coordinator, who's not here, but Jen Lambley, to help us do that multi-channel approach.
Yeah, so great work.
Seeing no other comments or questions, do I have a motion to approve the fall 2019 enrollment report?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The report is approved. Now to the FY19 financial wrap-up report. Rich, we get double rich today.
Well, President Nicholson, members of the board, Rich Clune, Vice President of Doom and Gloom.
No.
Actually, finance and operations, and just a couple things to report on. Maybe. So we're kind of going to take a step backwards and look at FY19 results. This one closed. Maybe we won't talk. Well, there we go. A little hard to see, but you saw the financial wrap-up documents in the board report, but I just wanted to focus on this one document because it encapsulates where we wound up for FY19. These are all pre-audit numbers. The audit's currently underway. Typically, we don't see a lot of movement coming out of that audit process. We'll come back with a final report once the audit's done and talk about that very briefly. But one of the key things I wanted to focus on was, as you look at each of the funds that are associated with the post-secondary fund, the general one, our large, where all the tuition fees are, bookstore fund, food service fund, child care fund. As we look at each one, as we go across this line, net operating results, you can see for FY19, the expenditures exceeded revenues at this point by about $700,000. That shouldn't come as a surprise. We talked about this throughout the entirety of the last fiscal year and the reasons behind that, with kind of a little bit of a downturn in FY19 of the tuition and fees and the credits that we were seeing. So that gets reflected in our overall results. Our other major categories in revenue as far as state aid was very close to what we anticipated. There was a little bit of a downturn in some of our donations and miscellaneous revenue, but that was related to the vet tech be moved, that construction project, into FY20. So when you get all said and done, the FY19 budget at the time when it was submitted was balanced. So this is what in accounting terms is an unfavorable variance, not the position where we wanted to be. And I'll talk a little bit about it when we get into the FY20, that we planned for this, or we accounted for this as we adopted our FY20 budget as well, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But as you scroll across, you can see the bookstore enterprise fund, very positive results that split between the bookstore operations in terms of textbooks and supplies and materials, and then the laptop program as well. So that helped lift that a little bit. Food service fund, pretty much right on. That does include a $85,000 subsidy from the post-secondary fund that was approved as part of that budget. And then in the child care fund as well, that's a positive result. There was a $39,000 subsidy in there as well. So one other thing to kind of point back up on the top here, when you look at, a lot of times in governmental, there's always a phrase we use, cash is kind of king, because we're a cash-driven organization. When you look at cash balance at the start of the fiscal year is just right at about $6 million. End of the fiscal year, we're at $6.3 million. So you ask, well, how can you lose money and still have your cash go up? But that's really some changes in assets and liabilities. So receivables that were outstanding at the end of 6/30/18 were paid during 19. So those money that were owed to us were collected. That drove our cash up. Money that we owed other people, we increased a little bit. So there was some outstanding payables at the end of the fiscal year that resulted in generating some cash too. But overall, the cash position remains strong. The fund balance remains strong as we head into FY20. So if you drill back into the other pages, I changed the format a little bit on the VP's report, tried to delineate it a little bit more, tried to break it out, and I didn't put subtotals on there because it gets pretty long, but you can kind of get a sense of where we moved in each category, kind of the major subcategories within wages or within benefits and what you see. So we talked about the tuition and fees variance. That's an enrollment-based number. The state aid was pretty much right on. There's a $21,000 favorable variance there. When you look at the other state, that's the GO-ED funding. That was that grant match related to the vet tech program. We raised the funds. That money's in. We do have it. It just came in FY20. Grants and donations, same type of thing. It's really related to that fundraising effort on the local level for the vet tech. Those funds are still being held by the foundation. They'll move over as that project gets underway later this year and into next year. We get down in the expenditure categories. Early retirement, we had talked about that throughout the course of the year, and that's actually reflected in the FY20 budget. Those early retirees at the end of FY19, we used to be able to spread that expense out over 5 years. That changed. It was all front-loaded in the year that they retire. So we knew there was going to be a variance coming from that, and that's reflected in there. Instructional costs, a little bit of a variance there in the full-time wages and benefits, a little bit on the adjunct instruction as well. Nothing major. Insurance on the medical, there was a positive variance there. Again, that's just based on enrollments. So as you have turnovers in positions, we always budget at the maximum. Somebody comes in and doesn't need the full benefit coverage, obviously we realize a little bit of a savings there. And the other major big category where there's a favorable variance is in those building improvements. And again, that vet tech program or that expansion was budgeted in FY19, but that didn't get built or we didn't get underway with it. So we'll start to see that covered. So again, you see the 686 loss for the fiscal year. And that's just kind of where we wound up through it. And like I said, there might be a few minor adjustments that come out of this audit. Typically, we see it more in the enterprise funds as it's related to some of the OPEB other post-employment benefits, some of the pension obligations that are recognized differently in the enterprise funds. But all in all, shouldn't have been any surprises to anybody as we looked at this. Enterprise funds, I'm not going to say too much. We were pretty much right where we thought we would be on those. So, any questions related to how we finished the year?
Thank you, Rich. Yes, you communicated throughout the year where we kind of are at, so at least nothing was surprising here.
No, and that should be the way it works. If I'm reporting quarterly correctly, there is a pattern to our revenue streams, maybe less so in our expenditures, although 65% being wages and benefits. You see a pattern develop. It happens. You'll see that when I talk about our FY20 outlook, where we can start to get a sense of what is going to happen throughout the course of the year. So as I do quarterly updates, really shouldn't be any surprises. We should know as we progress throughout the year. So
You might not have to subsidize the food service when that new high school is built out there, because you'll be about the only restaurant close enough for those students to go for open lunch.
well, yeah, we might have to build a sidewalk
Exactly.
or something in between. But, actually, food service is off to a good start this year. Daily sales, talking about that subsidy, are considerably better than what they were at this time last year. So when we get into the next report, we'll be done with the first quarter, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail on what we're seeing and what we're trending in those, especially in the food service and in the child care fund. Since we are subsidizing both of those funds, we'll kind of see where we wind up. So.
Seeing no more questions or comments, do I have a motion to approve the FY19 financial wrap-up?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Vicki, I'll let you figure out who. All those in favor of the approval of the FY19 financial wrap-up report signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item C, FY20 budget outlook.
Just wanted to take off from what Megan and Mandy and Micah were communicating with, and I'm not saying I've got a great crystal ball or anything, but I think it's important to kind of look at what is this fall kickoff, what does that mean for us as we move into this FY20 budget year. So clearly having our enrollment numbers be up is always a positive and good thing, and a much better place. I think some context is provided when you look at the Board of Regents and their numbers and the challenges with that. So it's a very competitive environment, a very competitive market. So victory lap for these guys behind me in what they were able to accomplish this year as we start as a foundational basis as we head throughout the remainder of the fiscal year. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and this kind of feeds back off of the loss, or I hate to call it a loss, but expenditures in excess of revenue in FY19. When the FY20 budget was adopted, I had tried to polish the crystal ball and do a projection of where I thought we were going to wind up for the year. And at that time, we were projecting about $778,000. So it came in less than that, but there's always some tweaks and things in there that change that perspective a little bit. But it's important to mention because we incorporated that projection into what we were doing in FY20. We had some one-time projects that were coming about in FY20 that we brought forward a recommendation to use existing cash, existing reserves to fund those. So one was the retirement benefit, early retirement. This will be the last year for eligible folks, so we increased that line item in the budget significantly by $500,000 in anticipation of potential retirees. And as I told you during the adoption time, it's not the high end, it's not our maximum exposure, it's not the bottom either. It lands somewhere in the middle. As one of those eligible, I don't know if it's cheaper to keep me or cheaper to get rid of me, so I guess we'll have to kind of figure that out. But Everybody needs to make their decision as they move forward with that, but that was one of those one-time things that we saw. It wasn't going to be an ongoing expense because the early retirement benefit, as it currently exists, is going to go away after this fiscal year. Another piece we have you to thank for with the Jefferson High School in the extension of that Terry Avenue. We talked about that, that we had some road improvements in our budget. They were out a few years. That location of that school, which we are excited about, is a good thing. So we said, that's not something we planned for. Let's use one-time money for that as well. Third element was parking lot improvements in UTEC High. We needed to bring that forward. We were starting to see some failures more on the north side of that parking lot that we needed to address and repair. So that was brought forward as these one-time projects. So in very general terms, you start adding those dollars up and you're in that 1.5 million, 1.6 million range of these one-time projects. The loss or the expenditures in excess of revenue in FY19 had a compounding effect when you turn around and you start to look to now again take a planned 1.6 million from it. So as we developed the FY20 budget, we tried to par that down and incorporate that deficit in FY19 into our proposed operating budget. And I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but if you look at the FY20 adopted budget, we are only proposing a planned utilization of reserves of $885,000. So you take that $700,000 deficit, add it to the $800,000 that's planned, we're back into that 1.5 million. So it's accounting speak for we covered the FY19 results in what we're proposing to do in FY20. So as we get through that and look at that, we're on track heading into this year, coming out of those results and where we're going. So I just want to talk a little bit about enrollments. When you look at our total revenue, clearly the two big categories are the student charges and our state support. So one of the things we took a look at just kind of briefly is a lot of the enrollment numbers are based off of a census date 10-day count. Financially, we don't run reports in the middle of the month. There's always some timing differences. So we look at where are we at the end of September. So how does that compare? So when we look at in this center item in the orange there, you'll see that the 2020 tuition budget's roughly $7 million, just over $7 million. Take a look back and say, all right, where we ended up in September, which is in the box above it at 3.22 million, how does that project out as we look at the end of the fiscal year? So kind of looked at an investment type analysis. What was our 1-year result, 3-year result, 5-year result, 10-year result? So what I mean by that is that 1 year ago, if I took a percentage of the tuition as of the end of September as a percentage of our total revenue for the year or total tuition for the year, we would project at 6.7 million. You look at a 3-year average at 6.8 million. If we project on a 5-year, again, 6.8. So that 3 to 5 year projection, linear approach to it as we look at those percentages seems to fit with what we're doing. But long story short, where we're at is we're a little bit behind in terms of our budget and what we built that budget on. We built it on 7 million. We're just a little bit behind. And given how that winds up at the end of the year as we stand here today, we could be anywhere from 95 to 97%. A lot of moving parts between now and next June 30th. One of the things is as we look at each month, what our terminations or melt in our student enrollments as we go forward. So you'll see this number move each month as to where I think we would project at the end of the fiscal year. But all in all, that is not a huge amount. It's not anything to be concerned about from my perspective at this point, but it's just an awareness issue that this early on as we go to project, this is what we're seeing. You go into the next slide.
Can I ask a quick question about this slide on the revenues?
Yeah.
When you see the student charges at 13 million
Yeah.
in the boxed area, and then the area across from it if you go back, it was the student charges or the tuition at 7 million.
Yep.
What do you add to the student charges to get it to 13 versus
That's the student fees, so that's what the next slide speaks to. So there's two main elements to it when we're looking at this analysis. So there's a tuition that is set by the State Board of Technical Education.
Okay.
That's at $121 of credit. Then there's fees that are set at a local level that you folks all set and approve. And off the top of my head, $86, I think, is what the local fee level is. But there's also other fees that come into that analysis. So if a student makes a late payment, if they enroll in a payment plan, their registration fee that they charge, used to call matriculation, that's part of that fee structure too. So it's basically anything that we are charging to a student. It's not necessarily always all credit-based, but it's predominantly credit-based. And so when you look at student charges, that's reflective of tuition and fees. So the first slide was speaking just to the tuition analysis. The fees move a little bit differently, and that's why I delineated between the two of them. So I think if you look at the 7 million, and then you look at the next slide and see the 6, it's not all of the student fees, but between those two, you're picking up the majority of it. There's just a tiny little bit. There's some laptop rentals and things like that. But so same type of analysis when we look at the tuition fees, because it's not all credit based. There's other things that come into play when we project that out, looking at it 1, 3, 5, 10 years back, using that percentage of total revenue. Fees are looking like it's going to come in anywhere from that 99.5% to actually 102%. So when you look at tuition and fees in aggregate, very, very close to, as we look today, where we think we're going to wind up and in line with what our budget is. Another major component is our state support. There's multiple elements coming into our state revenues as well. It's predominantly, you guys call it state aid. We call it something a little bit different, but it's really the same type of concept. What is the state contributing? It's a formulary calculation based off of enrollment in the prior year. So if we look at this first slide, you'll look and see that the budget, $6,362,000, the actual, this is an actual amount. We've received the calculation, so it's $6,349,000. So not much of a variance there. That's couch change, I call it, at $12,000. So we're in good shape with that. The other state components that I don't necessarily project, there's some one-time funds in there. We haven't seen those yet. We've been promised those. So that's a big piece. That's a $400,000 line item that the state has assured us we are going to receive, but obviously we haven't seen that yet and haven't got that actual confirmation. Some other state funding that comes in and makes up that whole $8.9 million is the Board of Regents Gen Ed agreement. We've kind of talked about that before. The revenue that we receive for that is actually to reimburse us for our instructional costs associated with that. So that kind of moves with the course offerings. We'll know more about that as we progress through the year. There's some R&M funds that are coming in through it related to the state GO-ED funding. That's already there. The other R&M's been confirmed. So a lot of the state stuff is already pinned down. There's not a lot of variance that's going to come with that. So I think when you look at our student charges and our state support, we are very, very close as we project out to what we built our budget on. So shouldn't have to stand before you if we stay on track with our expenditures, talking about projected losses in FY20. It looks like we're going to be on track. We're pretty close. The federal support, local effort, I didn't even do slides on those. Those are small dollar amounts, and those are pretty stable and pretty consistent and tend to come in at those levels. So not seeing a whole lot of jumping around with those. As I talked about it, the other element to this is the expenditure. So not only does our revenue have to come in with what we project, we need to toe the line in terms of our expenditures. So that's everybody adhering to the budget that was approved, trying to stay on track with those types of things. There's elements that we'll monitor. Big piece of it, that early benefits retirement. Like I said, I built 591,000 into that. If everybody that would be eligible to retire retired, that's not enough. If nobody retires, there's way too much in there. So again, we're somewhere in the middle in that. So I think it's important that we stick to our February 1 date of notification. Gives us a little bit of time to react. If we get that, we'll start to get a sense of it more of those folks that may be looking to retire after the first of the year. But hopefully we're in the right spot there. Adjunct hourly, we want to track that. Saw the fall adjunct budget as it rolled out. That's below where we were last year, so that's trending in a favorable position for us. As we get up into the bad debt, clearly, as folks are coming in, one of the important things is that they pay us and they fulfill their obligation to us. We just sent the journal entry down that would run it through the end of September. We're tracking almost where we were last year. So that's trending very similarly to prior years. I put the Gen Ed agreement in there because that's really an enrollment-based type of decision on the expenditure. So what tuition we collect, we have to remit to the Board of Regents. For about the first 8 to 9 years of that program, it was a money generator for us. That's now flipped and rolled to where our tuition costs have increased faster than our compensation costs. So it starts to create some separation. And so now we pay more than what we get back. So we're losing a little bit each year on that agreement. So we'll track that. On the capital side of things, our capital projects, new tech high parking lot, wasn't any surprises. That's complete. So we didn't run into any unforeseen events that drove that project budget beyond what we were anticipating. The vet tech lab construction, that's still an unknown. We're working with the architects on finalizing the construction documents. Once those are done, they'll be able to provide us a better estimate leading into the bid process. So we'll kind of know where we stand on that. We've got a couple other projects we'll roll into that, but as a percentage, they're fairly small. But we'll look at all of those types of things. Supplies and services, main things we're kind of keeping an eye on there is the R&M. Those are the unforeseen things you can't prepare for. Talked about in our meeting this morning about if a chiller goes out in the technology building, it's about 20 years old now. So that's in that range of that 20 to 25 year life for those. We didn't budget for that. It's out, it's a few years out, but that's a $250,000 impact if we were to have to replace that. So it's those unforeseen kinds of things, and something that we just need to be aware of and keep track of. So
I have a quick question. Could you give me an example of what services, what that means?
Sure. Services is basically anything that when somebody does something for us. So one of the big categories that's related to that, so any repair and maintenance, all our utilities fall into that category. So in our accounting structure, wages are 1,000 element. This is accounting speak, but 1,000 objects. Benefits are 2,000s. Wages are 3,000s. Supplies are 4,000. So this is anything that fits in that 3,000 accounting code. So like I said, travel's in there. Professional services is a big piece of it. We have hospital contracted instructors that represent a very big piece of that. The utilities is probably the second largest category when you look at those services types of things. And then our R&M, repair and maintenance types of things, is probably the third largest.
Thank you. The timing aspect for the $400,000 one-time payment, did they say would come the same time as like our HB 1182 money, or like our general state, or is there any, how can we pin that down, I guess, so we get a date that, since we're budgeting and we need to
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the first thing to pin them down is to pull up that email where he said, yeah, it's guaranteed you're going to get it, and remind them that you promised
So
this.
is that a board of tech thing, or do we go to?
No, it's it's the executive director of the Board of Technical Education putting forth the request through the Department of Education to draw those funds down. I don't anticipate any issues with it. I think they'll be good to their word on there. The timing of it, it's not a cash flow necessarily situation for us, but I think you make a good point that
Yeah, I just worry,
we really need to pin them
if
down.
the state budget's down and that could be
Exactly.
something
Let's
they
get
can
it
cut.
early
Yeah,
instead of
yeah, exactly.
having to compete with other things. And as you say that, I have to at least have one doom and gloom and keep with my title here. One thing that's currently in the works now on some state support is related to National Guard tuition reimbursement. The state provides some support for that and had really good, strong enrollment. And this is across the system, this just isn't us, but National Guard members enrolled in courses and taking classes. The state provides tuition assistance for those members, and the claim for this fall was about $150,000. The entire amount appropriated for the whole year is $215,000. So we've burned up 70% of that just in this fall term. So that's something that they're going to have to address. It's in statute that we will provide it. So if it's not funded, it becomes an unfunded mandate to us. And so there's a couple options. I proposed a couple different things today. One would be to go back to the Board of Technical Education and establish a reduced tuition rate. So it looks like a tuition discount then. Still has an impact to us on the revenue side of it. Another piece of it is in our general appropriation bill, because it's based off of an FTE count, they always appropriate a certain dollar amount, but if our FTE as a system comes in less, it creates some excess need there, or excess appropriation. That's happened based on that initial calculation. So that's a potential that money's been appropriated. It's appropriated for distribution through the formula, but could it be redirected to address any shortfall that could exist in that National Guard tuition? So that's one of those kind of looming things that's out there that we need to at least be aware of, at least track. As we get more information, then we'll kind of have to noodle it a little bit and see where we go with it. But I think you make a good point on that additional money, that with the flooding this year, what happens with the sales tax collections, how does that impact state government as a whole, and is there some midstream adjustments in those expenditures as the legislature, because they're in session during the middle of the fiscal year, do they make some changes in those appropriations and what they do?
Especially since it's one time, which was a catch-up for us to compare to the other
Right.
schools, which we were unfairly treated on already. That's where an area that would be easy for them just to eliminate, and I just feel like we need to secure our position.
Right. So that's my crystal ball approach to where I think we're going to wind up as we head into next year. But despite the levity in the title, I think it's a very good position to be in. Obviously, as the finance guy, I'd like to see 10% above, but all things considered, very, very good position as we finish out the rest of the year.
We're making improvements to our campus and making those capital expenditures.
Right.
Hopefully make
Improvements
us
to
in
the
a better position.
campus, improvements in processes, improvements in programs, improvements in methodology. So I think you're starting to see some of that take hold and starting to see some of that positive result, just even the construction camp today. As I watched and cringed as a risk manager as this front end loaders driving around all these parked cars going, oh wow.
Yeah.
But no accidents, so that's all great. So it all turned
My
out
son
well.
wasn't out there. Thank you. Any other questions for Rich? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the FY20 budget outlook report?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Anything else, President Griggs, for us? Yeah. Yeah, we already voted, so you're good.
Well, maybe just to, again, I want to express sincere thanks to Megan and her team. I was trying to remember how long ago, if it was 18 months or a little over that, I think, when I was in front of the board here and we talked about the restructuring in that area and really trying to pull together admissions and marketing and financial aid, student success, and to see how far it's come and how quickly is pretty amazing. And I think the best descriptor of it all is what Megan's comment about they have done this as a team, and they really have. And so, you know, congratulations to them. I know how hard they have worked. I know how, as Rich mentioned, how highly competitive higher education is today. So we are going to have to not only, you know, continue to do a good job, frankly, do a better job than we're doing now, but we have some very positive things coming forward. I think the new website and the new marketing campaign and some other things that I think we'll be excited to talk more about in future months with you all. But and thank you to the other individuals here that are represented, and I think about all of them have contributed to getting us to the point where we are. And Dean of Nursing, and I think our nursing programs are again full, have really strong retention. You know, so far this fall, some of our best numbers that we've seen in that regard. And IT is doing a tremendous job. We had a security incident, but it was handled very quickly, and they were able to get messaging out across campus very quickly, and that so those systems are working very well. And academics is making a number of improvements and continue to look for new program opportunities. We'll be bringing a new program in front of the State Tech Board meeting next week. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. So a lot of different initiatives, you know, underway, and want to thank you all again for the opportunity to present here, but more importantly for your help and assistance in helping us move forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Motion is second. All those in favor of motion of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Not one.